I never thought a parking spot would change my entire life, but here we are. My name is Alex, and I moved into Willow Creek Estates exactly 8 months ago. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first glance: manicured lawns, pristine sidewalks, and those cookie-cutter houses that all looked like they came from the same catalog. What I didn't know was that behind those white picket fences lurked Karen Dempsey, the HOA president, who would make my life a living nightmare over something as simple as where I parked my car. Let me paint you a picture of Karen. She's in her early 50s, always dressed like she's about to attend a country club luncheon even when she's just checking her mailbox. Her blonde hair is perpetually styled in that aggressive bob that screams, "I'd like to speak to your manager." And she carries a leather-bound notebook everywhere she goes, documenting every perceived violation in the neighborhood with the dedication of a detective investigating a murder case. She drives a white Lexus SUV with a license plate that reads, HOA Queen, which should have been my first red flag. The parking spot in question sits directly in front of my house. Now, according to the county records, the actual property records filed with the city, this is public street parking. No assignments, no reserved spots, just first come first serve like every other suburban street in America. But Karen had other ideas. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more epic tales of neighborhood justice. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It started on a Tuesday morning. I had just returned from a business trip. I work as a corporate litigation consultant, which becomes relevant later, and pulled into the spot I'd been using since I moved in. Before I could even grab my suitcase from the trunk, Karen materialized on her front porch like she'd been waiting for me. "Alex, we need to talk about your parking situation. That spot is mine. I've been parking there for 7 years." I kept my cool, smiled politely, and explained what I already knew. "Karen, I appreciate you coming over, but this is public street parking. There are no assigned spots in the HOA bylaws. I checked before I moved in. I'm thorough like that. When I bought the house, I read every single page of the HOA documentation, all 247 pages of it. Boring? Absolutely. Useful? You have no idea." Karen's face turned a shade of red that matched the roses in her garden. "I am the president of this HOA, and I'm telling you that spot has been mine for 7 years. Everyone in this neighborhood knows it. You need to park in front of your own house." She pointed to a spot about 50 feet down the street, directly under a massive oak tree that dropped sap like it was being paid to ruin car paint jobs. I remained calm. "I understand you've used it in the past, but legally, it's public parking. I'm happy to take turns, or we can both just park wherever is available. I'm not trying to cause problems." Famous last words, right? Karen's eyes narrowed. She tapped her pen against that leather notebook. "We'll see about that." Then she turned on her heel and marched back to her house, her sensible pumps clicking against the sidewalk like a countdown timer to chaos. For the next 2 weeks, things escalated in the most Karen way possible. Every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m., she would rush out of her house the moment I left for work and move her Lexus into her spot. Then she started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my windshield. The first one read, "This spot is taken. Please respect your neighbors." The second one, appearing just 3 days later, said, "Vital warning. Park elsewhere or face HOA consequences." I documented everything. Photos of the notes, timestamps of when her car appeared in the spot, even video footage from the discreet security camera I'd installed on my porch. Again, litigation consultant. I know how to build a case. Then Karen made her first official move. I received a formal HOA violation notice in my mailbox, citing me for unauthorized use of designated parking, with a $50 fine. The notice referenced Section 12.4 of the HOA bylaws. So I pulled out my copy of those bylaws and read Section 12.4 word for word. It dealt with parking on lawns and blocking driveways. Nothing about reserved street parking. Nothing at all. I attended the next HOA meeting with my documentation. The meeting was held in Karen's living room, because of course it was, and attended by 4 other board members who all looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I calmly presented my case, the county records, the actual bylaw text, the definition of public parking under municipal code. Karen sat across from me, arms folded, that fake smile plastered on her face. "The board will take your concerns under advisement," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But I've been president for 6 years, and I think I know the rules better than someone who just moved here." The other board members nodded weakly. They were terrified of her. I could see it in their eyes. The violation stood. Not only that, but the following week I received another notice, this time for creating neighborhood discord, with an additional $100 fine. Karen had also convinced the board to implement a new parking harmony rule that required residents to park in designated spots as determined by the HOA president. Guess which spot wasn't designated for me? Now, here's where my background becomes important. I don't usually like to throw around what I do for a living or who I know, but Karen was pushing buttons she didn't even know existed. See, I've spent the last 15 years helping Fortune 500 companies navigate complex legal situations. I've worked with real estate developers, municipal planning departments, and more lawyers than I can count. I understand property law, zoning regulations, and civil codes better than most attorneys. I also, and this is the key part, have enough money set aside from a very successful career to make things interesting. I spent the next month just observing. I paid the fines without complaint. I parked in the sap-covered spot under the oak tree and watched my car's paint job slowly deteriorate. But more importantly, I watched Karen. I documented every single move she made. Every parking pattern. Every time she left her house. Every interaction with other neighbors. I also started researching property records, zoning maps, easement documents, historical land surveys. I went deep. That's when I discovered something beautiful. The street we lived on, Willow Creek Drive, had an interesting history. Back in 1972, when the neighborhood was first developed, the original builder had retained ownership of certain portions of the street frontage as part of a complex land deal. Over the years, these parcels had been sold off, subdivided, and transferred multiple times. Most had been absorbed into the properties they fronted. But 3 parcels, tiny strips of land exactly 8 feet wide and 20 feet deep, had somehow remained separate. They'd been owned by an investment company that had gone bankrupt in 2008. The parcels had been seized by the county for unpaid taxes and then just sat there, forgotten, in the county's inventory of available properties. One of these parcels was located directly in front of Karen's house, the exact spot she claimed as hers. I smiled but I didn't stop there. Because remember, I'm thorough. I spent another 3 weeks planning. I consulted with a property attorney friend of mine who owed me a favor. I reviewed municipal codes regarding fence construction, property boundaries, and right-of-way access. I obtained permits, filed the proper paperwork, and lined up a construction crew. I made sure every single step was perfectly legal, properly documented, and utterly devastating. The county auction for the abandoned parcels happened on a Wednesday. Karen was at her weekly hair appointment. I knew her schedule by heart at this point. I submitted my bid online, $3,200. No one else even knew these parcels existed, so there was no competition. By noon, I owned an 8-foot by 20-foot strip of land directly in front of Karen's house. Phase 2 began immediately. I had the property surveyed and marked by a licensed surveyor the next morning. The bright orange stakes went up right along the property line, creating a perfect rectangle that encompassed Karen's precious parking spot. She came out of her house when she saw the surveyor, her face already showing concern. "What's going on here? This is public parking." The surveyor, a tired-looking man named Bill, just shrugged. "Private property survey, ma'am. I'm just marking the boundaries for the county records." He showed her the property map. Karen's face went pale. She rushed back inside, and I watched from my window as she frantically made phone calls. An hour later, she was pounding on my door. I opened it with my best innocent expression. "Alex, what is the meaning of this? That surveyor says you own the parking spot." "Not the parking spot, Karen. I own the land. The actual land. It's private property now. Check the county records if you don't believe me." I handed her a printed copy of the deed. "I bought it at auction yesterday. All legal and proper." She sputtered, her face cycling through shades of red and purple. "You can't do this. This is harassment. I'll report you to the HOA. I'll call the police. Actually, Karen, you can call whoever you'd like. I've broken no laws. It's my property. I can do with it as I please, within zoning regulations, of course." I paused for effect. "And speaking of which, I've already obtained the necessary permits." "Permits? Permits for what?" I smiled. "You'll see. Have a great day, Karen." That weekend, while Karen was visiting her sister 2 states away, another thing I had learned from monitoring her calendar that she posted publicly on the neighborhood Facebook group, the construction crew arrived at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. They worked with military precision. First, they installed fence posts at each corner of my property. Heavy-duty steel posts, set in concrete, exactly meeting the building codes. Then came the fence itself. 8 feet tall, solid wood privacy fence, stained a lovely shade of cedar. No gaps, no windows, completely opaque. But here's the beautiful part. Karen's Lexus was parked in what used to be the public spot. And now, that Lexus was completely enclosed within my property, trapped inside an 8 by 20-foot fenced rectangle like a very expensive museum exhibit. The crew finished by Sunday afternoon. They cleaned up perfectly, left no debris, and even planted some decorative bushes along the outside of the fence. It looked intentional, like a planned property feature. Because it was. Monday morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch when Karen returned from her trip. I heard her car door slam from down the street, then footsteps running. Then silence. Then a sound I'll never forget, a kind of strangled gasp mixed with a shriek. What is this?" Karen stood in front of my property, staring at the fence that now imprisoned her Lexus. She ran around all 4 sides, confirming what she already knew. Her car was completely inaccessible, surrounded by an 8-foot-tall fence on all sides. I walked over casually. "Oh, Karen, you're back. How was your trip?" "My car. You fenced in my car." This is illegal." "Actually, it's completely legal. This is my property. I showed you the deed. The fence meets all zoning requirements. I have all the permits right here." I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying. Building permit, property line verification, even approval from the Historical Preservation Committee, since this is technically in the historic district. She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police right now. This is imprisonment. This is vehicular kidnapping. You should definitely call them." "I'll wait." I sat down on my porch steps while she dialed 911. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later. Karen was in full meltdown mode, gesturing wildly at the fence, her voice hitting octaves I didn't think were humanly possible. The officers looked at my permits, walked the property line, consulted with someone on their radio, and then delivered the news. Ma'am, this is a civil matter. He owns the property, the fence is legal, and your vehicle is technically parked on his private property without permission. You'll need to contact a lawyer. Karen's face went from red to white. But how do I get my car out? One officer shrugged. You'll have to work that out with the property owner, ma'am. We can't force him to modify his legal fence. After the police left, Karen turned to me with desperation replacing the anger. Alex, please. This is insane. Just let me get my car out, and I'll never park there again. I'll apologize. I'll revoke the fines. I pretended to consider this. You know, Karen, that's a really reasonable request. And I would love to help you. But here's the thing. You spent months telling me how important rules are. How the HOA president knows best. How we all need to follow proper procedures and respect authority. I pulled out my own leather-bound notebook. I'd bought one just like hers. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to submit a formal written request to access my property. In triplicate. Then I'll review it at my leisure, maybe form a committee to study the issue, and we'll get back to you. Should take 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe longer. 6 to 8 weeks? I need my car. Should have thought about that before you weaponized the HOA rules, Karen. See, the difference between us is that I actually know what I'm doing. You are playing checkers with made-up rules. I'm playing chess with real ones. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. I could see her mind working, calculating, trying to find an angle, any angle, to regain control. But there wasn't one. Every move I'd made was airtight. Every document filed properly. Every regulation followed to the letter. Oh, and Karen? About those HOA fines you gave me? I pulled out another folder. I filed a formal complaint with the state HOA regulatory board. Turns out, issuing fines for violations of rules that don't actually exist in the bylaws is illegal. So is creating new rules without a proper member vote, which your parking harmony rule definitely didn't have. My lawyer estimates you're looking at personal liability of around $40,000, plus potential removal from the board. The hearing is scheduled for next month. Karen's legs seemed to give out. She sat down hard on the curb, staring at the fence that imprisoned her Lexus. Her phone rang, probably one of the neighbors who'd heard the police sirens, but she didn't answer it. She just sat there, her perfect bob slightly disheveled, her country club outfit rumpled, her leather notebook hanging limply from one hand. I walked back to my porch and picked up my coffee. It was still warm. From my vantage point, I could see Karen's face as the reality of the situation fully sank in. Her precious parking spot, the hill she'd chosen to die on, was now a literal cage for her car. The HOA rules she'd wielded like weapons had been turned against her with precision and legal force. Her reign as the neighborhood's petty tyrant was over, ended by 8 feet of cedar fence and a $3,000 property investment. The look on her face was something I'd remember forever. Not just shock, not just anger, but the dawning comprehension that she'd been completely, utterly, and legally destroyed by someone who actually knew how to play the game. Someone who had the resources, the knowledge, and the patience to let her dig her own grave before pushing her into it. She looked up at me, and in that moment, Karen Dempsey understood exactly what it felt like to be on the other side of petty tyranny. And it was beautiful. If you enjoyed watching Karen get what she deserved, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more stories of epic neighborhood justice. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in this situation. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is just knowing the rules better than your enemy does. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.